and welcome to Indus News. Live from Islamabad, I'm Naila Shuja and these are the headlines. In Gaza, the death toll from incessant Israeli airstrikes has risen to 200, including 59 children and 35 women. More than 1,300 have been wounded as the Israeli bombardment of the besieged Strip enters its second week. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has once again expressed concern over escalating violence a day after the U.S. blocked a UN statement for a third time in a week. But he has asked Israel to provide justification for the attack on media houses. Pakistan's parliament has unanimously passed a resolution against the ongoing Israeli aggression and forced evictions of Palestinians. Tabled by Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, the resolution called for an immediate halt to Israeli attacks on Palestinians. It also demanded an independent UN probe into Israeli crimes in Gaza. The United States, Britain and Canada have imposed fresh sanctions on several officials and entities linked to Myanmar's ruling military over the coup. Myanmar has been in crisis since the military seized power in February and detained elected leaders. Nearly 790 people have been killed in the crackdown on anti-coup protesters. Authorities have evacuated nearly 150,000 people as COVID hit India. Braces for the strongest cyclone in over 2 decades. At least 12 people have already died as Cyclone TAUKTAE brushed past the western coastal states and left a trail of destruction. The cyclone is set to make landfall in Gujarat on late Monday. India has registered over 4,100 coronavirus deaths and more than 281,000 cases in the past 24 hours. In Pakistan, 74 more people lost their lives to the virus, while more than 3,200 tested positive overnight. The global number of coronavirus infections has crossed 163 million, with more than 3.37 million deaths. For more news and details, stay tuned. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back. In Gaza, the death toll from incessant Israeli airstrikes has risen to 200, including 59 children and 35 women. More than 1,300 have been wounded as the Israeli bombardment of the besieged Strip enters its second week. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken has once again expressed concern over escalating violence a day after the U.S. blocked a UN statement for a third time in a week. But he has asked the Israel to provide justification for an attack on media houses. China says the United States has obstructed the Council from speaking with one voice. Meanwhile, rights groups have asked the International Criminal Court to probe Israel's bombing of a building housing media houses as a possible war crime. The UN General Assembly will also convene on Thursday to discuss Israeli aggression in Palestine. In Pakistan, the parliament has unanimously passed a resolution against the ongoing Israeli aggression and forced evictions of Palestinians. Tabled by Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi, the resolution called for an immediate halt to Israeli attacks on Palestinians. It also demanded an independent UN probe into Israeli crimes in Gaza. Speaking on the occasion, Qureshi said foreign ministers of Pakistan, Turkey, Sudan, and Palestine will visit New York and raise a voice for the Palestinians. He hoped that a meeting of the EU foreign ministers on Tuesday would send a clear message to Israel to stop attacks. But he regretted the blocking of a UN statement by the United States at the Security Council meeting on Sunday. Turkey says Israel's attacks concerns not just Palestinians but Muslims, Christians, and humanity. Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan was speaking to Pope Francis over a phone call. Erdogan called for unity against the occupier, which does not hesitate to attack religious sanctuaries. He expressed hope that the Pope will continue to issue the messages to mobilize the Christian and international community. The Turkish president regretted that the UN Security Council was yet to display a required sense of responsibility. He said Turkey is carrying out diplomatic efforts at all relevant international platforms in solidarity with the Palestinians. Indian troops have martyred 2 civilians in occupied Jammu and Kashmir's Srinagar district. The occupying troops have martyred more than 325 civilians since the revocation of the valley in August 2019. The youths were targeted during a so-called cordon and search operation in Konmo area of the district. The operation was going on while the whole area has been sealed. Protests erupted in the area after the martyrdom of the youths. Hundreds of people gathered outside the building where the youths were targeted. They chanted anti-India and pro-freedom slogans. EU's envoy Androla Kiminara has called on Pakistan's Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa in Rawalpindi to discuss the Afghan peace process and regional security. According to the military's media wing, General Bajwa said Islamabad values its ties with the European Union. He said Pakistan looks forward to bolster their relations based on common interests. Kiminara hailed Pakistan's efforts for bringing peace and stability in the region. Pakistan has conveyed its serious concerns to Afghanistan over its recent irresponsible statements and baseless allegations. In a recent démarche to Kabul's ambassador, Pakistan's Foreign Office emphasized that groundless accusations erode trust and the environment between the two brotherly countries. It urged that such actions also disregard the country's constructive role in facilitating the Afghan peace process. Iran has ruled out agreeing to a preliminary deal with the world powers on the revival of the 2015 nuclear deal during the talks in Vienna. In a press briefing, Foreign Ministry spokesperson Saeed Khatibzadeh said no agreement would be drafted until all conditions are met. He said the 3 working groups have finalized a considerable part of the remaining issues. Khatibzadeh added some of those issues are left to be solved through political decisions. The spokesperson said Joint Commission of the deal would reconvene this week if deemed necessary. Earlier, Russia's envoy in Vienna said he held fruitful discussions related to major issues with the U.S. Special Envoy for Iran, Robert Malley. The United States, Britain and Canada have imposed fresh sanctions on several officials and entities linked to Myanmar's ruling military over the coup. In a statement, the U.S. Treasury Department accused the Myanmar's State Administration Council of supporting unlawful overthrow of the elected government in February. The United Kingdom says the sanctions will cut off funding for the military, which is responsible for human rights violations. Canada acted in coordination with the United States and Britain, saying it stands with the people of Myanmar in their right for democracy. Myanmar has been in crisis since the military seized power and detained elected leaders. Nearly 790 people have been killed in the crackdown on anti-coup protesters. India has registered over 4,100 coronavirus deaths and more than 281,000 cases in the past 24 hours. The global number of coronavirus infections has crossed 163 million with more than 3.37 million deaths. More in this report.
The COVID-19 crisis in India has exacerbated the country's multi-pronged calamities emanating from its fragile socio-economic and political fabric. A top Indian virologist resigned from the government's panel of advisors on coronavirus variants weeks after questioning the authorities' handling of the pandemic. Indian doctors have been recording a huge spurt in cases of mucormycosis, an aggressive hard-to-treat fungal infection among COVID-19 patients. Residents living in the riverbanks are getting extremely anxious as more floating bodies keep appearing in Indian rivers. They said hundreds of bodies are being buried at the riverbank every day. Meanwhile, in the tough times, a food delivery network across Mumbai has been offering free lunches to help out patients on a budget.
When the second lockdown started, it was so hard to buy food because everything was shut down. These people give the food here, which is really tasty and fills our stomachs. And we can save money. Whatever money we are saving is going for better medical treatment.
In England, a cross-party inquiry group has demanded a public inquiry into whether Prime Minister Boris Johnson's decision to delay adding India to the travel red list of countries was influenced by his desire to start trade talks with New Delhi. As the UK has eased more restriction, health experts said people should avoid socializing indoors to prevent the Indian variant. Saudi Arabia has opened its land, air and sea borders today after more than a year of restrictions. The country announced that foreign vaccinated visitors arriving by air will no longer need to quarantine.
Thank God, after a year and a half of banning traveling, today we can travel. Thanks to God. Now someone can finish his work, whether it is for tourism or for business. And hopefully this pandemic will get to an end, so everyone can travel, God willing.
U.S. top infectious disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci said, undeniable effects of racism have led to severe health disparities that especially impacted African Americans, Hispanic Americans, and Native Americans during the pandemic. A new poll has showed that more than 80% of Japanese oppose hosting the Olympics this year, with just under 10 weeks until the Tokyo Games.
In Pakistan, 74 more people have lost their lives to the coronavirus as the country's death toll approaches 20,000. The health ministry has reported more than 3,200 new cases overnight as the country's caseload tops 88,000. It said that nearly 78,000 people have recovered so far from COVID-19. Meanwhile, more than 3.8 million doses of the vaccine against coronavirus have been administered so far. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. In Iraq, 8 ISIS militants have been killed in airstrikes by Iraqi warplanes on their hideouts in the northern province of Nivina. According to a statement by the military, security forces also seized weapons and ammunition from the destroyed sites. The Iraqi army continues to carry out frequent operations against the terror group in the areas where ISIS militants are active. In Tunisia, security forces have killed 5 suspected militants in the mountains near the border with Algeria. Security officials said a joint operation by police and armed forces is still ongoing. 6 years ago, an ISIS militant killed 39 foreigners on a beach in the coastal city of Sousse, triggering an exodus of tourists. Since then, Tunisia has grown more effective in preventing and responding to attacks. But sleeper cells still pose a real threat, especially with the return of militants from Syria, Iraq, and Libya. Russia seeks to outlaw the political movement of jailed Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny. A Russian court is ready to hear an extremism case against the Navalny political network. The court hearing comes as a sweeping crackdown against the political movement of Putin's most staunch critic. The Russian parliament's lower house is also set to debate a bill that would bar political activism as a part of the crackdown. The bill will prevent individuals from alleged extremist organizations from being elected. Prosecutors in Russia had earlier labeled the Navalny network as extremist after criticism from the Kremlin. Russian treatment of Navalny in jail has already prompted global outrage and criticism. In Chile, the ruling coalition Chile Vamos is expected to fall short of keeping themselves in control of the Constitution delegates' vote. According to the electoral authority, CERVAL, the coalition has secured just 21% of the votes. Independent candidates have emerged as the winners of the election with 69% of the votes counted. Local media projected that independents would win 45 seats, Chile's Vamanos 39, and center-left 25, and the far left would take 28. The ruling coalition needs at least one-third of the majority in the elections to push for a constitutional reform. Changing the Constitution was a central demand to emerge from fierce social protests that erupted over inequality and elitism in October 2019. Since then, the popularity of the ruling coalition has greatly decreased owing to the pandemic handling and other economic issues. In Peru, socialist presidential candidate Pedro Castillo and right-wing Keiko Fujimori are neck and neck just 3 weeks before the runoff. A voter simulation shows Castillo has 51.1% support and Fujimori 48.9%. Another poll shows Castillo leading Fujimori in voting intentions by 36.5% to 29.6%. Both have outlined new taxes and royalties for miners in their campaign. Castro says he will raise taxes and royalties on the mining sector and renegotiate tax contracts of large companies if re-elected. Fujimori, contesting from jail over human rights abuses, has also pledged to distribute Peru's mineral wealth more evenly. India's western state of Gujarat is braced for the landfall of a severe cyclone TAUKTAE, likely to be the strongest to hit the region since 1998. The storm has roared up India's western coast over the past 2 days, with 6 people dead and thousands evacuated. Efforts are currently underway to rescue more than 400 people stranded off the coast in 2 commercial barrages. The cyclone is likely to make landfall on early Tuesday and comes amid a devastating COVID-19 wave that has overwhelmed India's healthcare system. In Brazil's Amazon region, thousands of families have been affected by heavy rains and flooding brought on by the El Niño weather phenomenon. Ongoing since last year, the event is characterized by unusual cold temperatures in parts of the Pacific Ocean. It has sparked chaos in the town of Anama, where the state of emergency has been declared. Families use boats and canoes to move around the town, home to 14,000 people. The floods could become the worst in a century, with some 350,000 people affected. The European Union has been urged to toughen its weak environmental targets for the reduced emission of carbon dioxide. European Campaign Transport Group and Environment said that the bloc needs to shift to electric vans to cut emission and reduce fossil fuel usage. The group said the environmental targets of the EU are very weak, and it needs to step up to ensure the goal of 31% emission reduction. It has demanded that the EU should prevent van makers from building plug-in hybrid vans that rely on fossil fuel engines. The group said the EU should set a 100% carbon dioxide reduction target by 2035. The World Health Organization says working long hours is killing hundreds of thousands of people every day. The study warns the worsening trends may accelerate due to the pandemic. Details in this report.
The first global study on the loss of life associated with longer working hours has depicted some horrifying effects on human health. A paper published in the Environment International Journal shows that 1 in every 10 people globally worked long hours in 2016, while 745,000 people died from diseases associated with overwork in the same year.
We found working 55 or more hours per week increased risk of dying of ischemic heart disease by 17% after 10 years. This was based on data from 340,000 participants in 22 cohorts studied globally. We also found working 55 hours or more per week increased the risk of having a stroke by 35%.
The joint study by WHO and the International Labour Organization shows that most of the victims were men. Officials say the surge in remote working due to COVID-19 and the economic slowdown may have increased the risk.
We have some evidence that shows that when countries go into national lockdown, the numbers of hours work increased by about 10%. This is from a study from the National Bureau of Economic Research in the United States across, I think, 15 countries in 2 regions. They've shown there is an increase in working hours, so this might well be operating through teleworking, but we don't know enough quite yet, but it looks like it.
According to the study, people living in Southeast Asia and the Western Pacific were most affected.
In Peru, a zoo in the capital, Lima, is presenting 2 endangered baby American crocodiles born through artificial insemination. Details in this report.
Endangered crocodiles born via artificial insemination are making their first appearance at the Huachipa Zoo. The zookeepers say the baby crocs were born in February and are doing well. They say the crocs are almost 3.5 months old now and measure 26 centimeters in length. The crocodile eggs were incubated for 90 days and were the only surviving 2 out of 24.
Nacieron con 30.
One of them was born weighing 35 grams, the other weighing 40. Now that they are 3 months and 10 days old, the animals have gained more than 70 grams per individual. So those animals were born with 17 centimeters total body length. And as of today, they are 26 centimeters long. That is, the animals are on the right track. They are developing well.
Crocodiles are still classified as an endangered species, although the number of large reptiles have rebounded in some parts of the world.
Los animales actualmente se encuentran en peligro.
These animals are currently in danger of extinction. Their population in the wild is reduced due to the pollution of their natural habitat. Their habitat is being used by people and also by agricultural workers. Any reproduction in captivity is a conservation success.
According to experts, the American crocodile, which can grow up to 16 feet, are shy and reclusive. They can be found in countries like Mexico, Venezuela, Peru, Ecuador, and the United States.
Mexico's Andrea Meza has been crowned as the new Miss Universe as the competition was finally held after a year's delay due to the pandemic. The 26-year-old Meza was selected from 73 other candidates representing their countries and territories. She was presented the crown by Miss Universe 2019, Zozibini Tunis, in the ceremony held in Hollywood, Florida. According to her contestant biography, Meza holds a degree in software engineering. The show was co-hosted by Mario Lopez and former Miss Universe Olivia Culpo, and also featured a special performance by Luis Fonsi. It's now time for a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. The Wall Street stocks have slipped at the open as signs of inflationary pressures kept investors worried about strict monetary policy. The indices of the S&P 500 and Dow Jones Industrial Average traded over 0.25% lower, while the tech-savvy Nasdaq Composite dropped by about 0.5%, hit by inflation fears. Moreover, cryptocurrency-related stocks have also declined as Bitcoin swung in volatile trading. Meanwhile, the oil prices remain stable, trading in a tight range as European economic reopenings offset gloom from surging coronavirus cases in Asia. Bitcoin saw partial recovery after Elon Musk clarified in a tweet that Tesla has not dumped its holdings. Earlier, his weekend tweets hinted Tesla is considering or may have already sold some of its massive holdings. Bitcoin fell more than 9% on Monday to a 3-month low of $42,185, but it later rallied more than 5% to cross $45,000. Musk has done a U-turn on the cryptocurrency in the past week. He announced that Tesla will stop accepting Bitcoin due to fears that its energy use is hurting the planet. It's now time to take a look at the weather updates from around the world. For the latest news updates, you can follow us on our social media at Indus.News.